All right, it's 7 o'clock and we have a long agenda for this evening. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Here.
Miss Wu,
Can you hear me okay? No?
okay, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Miss Hersey,
Here.
Miss Colacetti,
Here.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
All right. We will start with our agenda. Now that we've had roll call, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the meeting from November 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve them?
I'll move to approve the minutes from November 15th, 2021.
Thank you, Grace. Do I have a
Second.
second? Thank you, Mary Alice. Any discussion or corrections for the minutes? Yes, Mayor Marlin.
Just a correction on a name on page 2, number 5B, under public input, second to the last line, I believe. Councilmember Hersey read a letter from Julia Guth. That's Juth. Thank you.
Yes, Grace.
I don't have anything. I just wanted to confirm the spelling of Brian Hoffer's name on the first page.
It's correct.
That's all. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Would the clerk please call the roll for approval of the minutes as amended?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Colacetti,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin.
Yes.
Right, that passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is a section for additions to the agenda. We do have a long agenda, but were there any additions for tonight? I see none. So I will move on to public input and presentations. Would members of the public who wish to address the city council, please raise your hand. I see Jonathan Blake. Jonathan, are you ready? We're not hearing you at the moment. It looks like you're unmuted, but I do not hear anything. Maybe check your microphone. Can you try again? Sorry, I'm not hearing anybody else hearing him. I'm sorry, Jonathan, there seems to be an issue with your microphone. Are there others who wish to address council? I don't see any other hands raised at this moment. Sarah Nixon.
Hello, City Council. This is Sarah Nixon. I'd like to comment on some matters appearing on today's meeting agenda and discussed at recent council meetings. First, the omnibus budget amendment number 4 that asks you to approve taxpayer spending on excessive outside legal services because, quote, staff continues to use outside counsel to provide legal services for the city, which makes it necessary to reallocate an additional $180,000 from salaries to legal services, end quote. The memorandum provided to you by the administration does not state at what frequency it expects Urbana taxpayers to shell out payments of such legal fees. So we would like to know, when will Urbana be billed another $180,000 for superfluous legal fees, and then another $180,000? Hefty legal fines and fees have been necessitated, not least because of recent Open Meetings Act lawsuit losses suffered and billed to the taxpayers due to what many community voices have called terrible decisions made by Mayor Marlin and her appointees. Another note, this concerns perceived intimidation, harassment, and gaslighting of city council members via the media. There appears to be a pattern that's becoming established where the local establishment news media is being weaponized to target city council members with whom the mayor disagrees on matters of policy. This looks like borderline intimidation. It has to stop. We see what you are doing, and it has to stop. This is still a democracy, Mayor Marlin, and your council is duly elected older people. They represent constituents, or they represent the interests of constituents, not yours and your cronies. So let them do their job, and I would say enough with the hit jobs via the news media. I'd also like to comment on broadly the issue of neighborhood safety, as well as the mayor's task force on community safety, or it has a name similar to that if that's not quite it. And homeowner operated surveillance cameras. So the first question there is, when was the last time that this task force met? Last week, I polled a block in Urbana that is impacted by rising crime and gun violence, and I asked if neighbors wanted to form a neighborhood watch program, just your basic neighborhood watch program. The answer was unanimously in favor. I also asked, what do folks think needs to happen in Urbana to lower the crime rate? Answers that struck me included attend NA meetings. NA meetings are Narcotics Anonymous. Engage with the community as human beings. That comment specifically with regard to law enforcement, Urbana police. Engage with the community as human beings, as role models, especially youth. Adolescents at risk do not have the role models they need. I also asked if people were in favor of ALPRs. The response was no. People want home security cameras. And it so happens that a gun violence victim who spoke to the council last week and who I think might speak this evening has marshaled his outrage and also his white privilege to gain prominent media exposure. Now, he might not perceive his white privilege, but I will acknowledge it. He has done what we all need to be doing, has rolled up his sleeves and gotten things done. He's mobilized law enforcement partnership and funding and announced a door cam giveaway program for Urbana homeowners. Mayor Marlin, why have you not introduced exactly such a program? It's clear that you would have unanimous buy-in from the council. I think my time is up, so I will continue my comment at a subsequent meeting. Thank you.
All right, next we have Alvaro Molina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, did I get your name correct?
Yes, my name is Alvaro Molina. Just arrived with 2 children and my wife a couple of years ago to your area, so I'm relatively new. I'm concerned of the garbage situation, all the litter in the 3 cities, Savoy, Urbana, and Champaign, and particularly in the established parking lots of these large conglomerates such as Target, Walmart, and so on and so on. There is no ban or there are no initiatives right now when it comes to plastic, and plastic has become a concern for the cities and for the visitors and for the image of all the 3 cities. So I would like to see in the future if we can start an ordinance or a ban on plastic. And I work actually at Walmart, but I'm not talking in behalf of Walmart. I'm talking as a citizen of the area. And I volunteer quite a bit of time to clean up our own mess in the parking lots. But my goal is not to be doing this for the rest of my life. The garbage, usually these large conglomerates, they will not police themselves. And this is where we need the municipal governments to come together and address the problem of plastic pollution that is hitting our rivers, lakes, and oceans. So I'll leave it with that, and I hope to meet with the 3 cities and try to create a collective effort that will bring collective solutions, along with working with the corporate sector. And myself, I have already started working with our corporate guys at Walmart to initiate a process where we can transform the way we're handling our mess. And if you walk around in the city of Urbana and go to the Walmart store, you're gonna run into creeks that are heavily polluted. If you go to the one in Champaign, you're gonna go and just cross the street and you're gonna see large cornfields that are now cornfields / plastic dumps. And all that garbage has to stop. I don't see any other way. Thank you very much and have a beautiful evening.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Alan Max Axelrod.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. First, I want to say solidarity with Alvaro. It's been about 2 years since we spoke, but he has been very consistent on this issue. He's got a very long track record on this issue of doing some pretty good, so let's just call it environmental capitalism, environmental activism. It's actually something where I would highly encourage, especially the Sustainability Advisory Council or Commission, I keep forgetting which the C stands for, to follow up with him. I actually am here mostly to comment about evictions and utility shutoffs. We have a map actually of evictions that are filed in the city of Urbana. One of the reasons that I was speaking out about the ALPRs is not because of privacy. We're all aware, due to Edward Snowden et al., that our right to privacy is severely eroded. The doorbell program, for example, was tried in Garden Hills. There are some benefits, there are some detractions from it, especially in areas that aren't properly lit. However, the price tag of the ALPRs, which may or may not be a subscription, that's something worth getting clarification on, because otherwise we may as well just have cameras if we're going to do something like that. Barely 24 households. I'm pretty sure $50,000 would cover their lapsed rent. Why can't the city do an expedited program for households that have found themselves in eviction court? Yes, we have the household eviction program that has opened up statewide, start date December 6th. But we've seen difficulty in distributing that money, and where Illinois has been among one of the best in distributing that money. It's not been the best. The intervention program that we have for evictions. It's voluntary. Any landlord that says no can stop that protection from taking effect at the court. That needs to be a binding measure. It's not too much to ask for to make mandatory mediation a thing. Sometimes that's done in family court. If we can do that for families, we can do that for our residents during a pandemic when it comes to staying safely housed, not even getting into Omicron right now because we don't know enough. What I will say is that the total number of utility shutoffs in Urbana has been 2,386, according to state filings through the month of November of this year, of which 1,384, that is more than half, have occurred since July of this year. Oh, sorry, 1,002. So just about half. The point being that when you look at the state aggregates, you look at the utility shutoffs relative to the pandemic caseload, we have had over half of our state state utility shutoffs in the last 4 months as well. 194,000 utility shutoffs from July through November out of 372,000 total. I don't really need to remind you much more than that. I want to thank this body for passing 2 resolutions on utility shutoffs. I'm sorry to see that we may have to continue passing more resolutions on that. I may do some follow-up with the city of Urbana about the Maintaining Access to Essential Services Act of 2021, which would provide a countrywide solution to the utility shutoffs issue. Anyway, have a good night.
Thank you. Next, I see Dean Hazen. Mr. Hazen, you'll need to unmute.
Okay, did you finally, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Thank you, I appreciate it. You know, that statement from Sarah Nixon was really sad because she's basically re-victimizing the victims. I am proud that people are finally starting to step forward and talk about how our failed policies in the city are getting people murdered. And it's just sad to see somebody, you know, take that and twist it into a political message towards the mayor. But I want to read you the statement that I wrote earlier today, so please forgive me for getting out of order here. As you know, my name is Dean Hazen, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm a former Urbana council member and a retired UPD officer. I have served in law enforcement for 28 years collectively. I was on this council when the traffic stop data was being evaluated, and I knew exactly where it was going. I consistently warned everyone that the data study was a waste of time and money, because simply put, you can't solve social problems with math or academic psychobabble. I also warned that implementing such a program would quickly lead to a spike in violent crime. And although I fully appreciate that questioning authority and evaluating enforcement methods are both necessary to keep government power in check, however, it's only common sense that these actions be taken in times of stability. Like any UPD officer, I knew that we were barely keeping the hounds at bay and we couldn't afford to let our guard down. Nevertheless, here we are, 8 homicides and 100 confirmed shots fired calls later. Now that these failed policies have placed us in this horrible position, there is only one way to get this back under control. We need to end the traffic stop pilot program, which is effectively a no stop zone program, and purchase the license plate readers. Marrying proactive police work with a reactive tool will immediately save lives and send a clear and long-term message to these violent criminals. These actions are both inevitable. They're going to happen. The only question is, how many homicides are we all willing to tolerate before we're willing to see these failed policies for what they are and take swift action to reverse them? If you choose to stay in denial, the homicide rate will continue to climb and people of this community will eventually force your hand. However, many more people will die by then. So I hope that we act now, because even one more homicide is one too many for me. I am speaking from real experience and out of love for this community, and I hope that you will take my comments seriously and take swift action to protect the law-abiding people of this community. And I find it just, fascinating that some of the people that talk out against these things are convicted felons. I just think that's something we should keep in mind. Her comments are just absolutely garbage. And it's pathetic to re-victimize victims. I'm proud that these people are coming forward. I'm proud that they're on the news. And Sarah Nixon was completely out of line tonight. So thank you for your time. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. We'll try to get you on here again. Hopefully with better luck this time for your sound. Jonathan Blake, please promote him.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now we can, yes, thank
All
you.
right, wonderful. I just wanted to log on tonight and just kind of bring up just a couple little things. I had the privilege of just hearing the tail end of someone saying that I had white privilege. And I would have to disagree with that completely. I don't see color, I see people. And at the end of the day, this may have happened to me, but my coworker, she was not white. And whatever is going on in our community, I don't think it has necessarily a bearing on who they're going after or what they're going after. It's a simple fact that they're going after people for a reason. Lincoln Square Mall, 2 shots or 2 victims shot again. And that's real close to Ward 6. You know, Teresa Von Thaden, she lives in Ward 6. I live in Ward 6. I believe the Lincoln Square's in Ward 1. But at the end of the day, we still have a lot to do and very little time to get it done in. The police need tools. You know, Sarah Nixon did make a good point. And that point was, well, maybe there was a doorbell cam solution or an idea or something in there. But so far, the only thing we saw come to light is LPRs. So why isn't some kind of program introduced like what I've done on my own? I'm only one person. And within less than 3 weeks, I've managed to get not 100, but by another gracious donation, we're about to put an order in for another 300. So again, I'm questioning, why is it taking so long to be able to get something accomplished? You guys are the ones, you, my council members, are the ones that control what goes on the docket and what gets voted on and how it gets done. You guys have to do your research. I understand that. But at the end of the day, something needs to move forward. If you're not going to do LPRs today, then you need to figure out something for tomorrow because our time is limited. You know, every day that we take a approach of, oh, maybe something else will come up or there's something more important, is just another day that we're sitting around waiting for a solution. The gentleman that brought up the thing about rent assistance, I have to agree. I spoke with 3 of the victims from this year alone, and they have received 5-day notice to vacate. That's occurring to our own victims, our citizens, right here in Urbana. And, you know, I'm not an advocate, but I think I may have to start being one here real soon. I mean, I don't know what else to do. This is just getting really crazy. I didn't ask for any of this. And I stood up, and I'm a voice, and I may be a face, but I'm not done, and I'm not going to go away. And I'm hoping we can come with some kind of idea or solution to be able to help curb the gun violence. We will never eliminate it, but at least we can take a stand and find a solution and reduce the gun violence in our community. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Right, thank you. Is there anyone from the public, else from the public who wishes to address the city council? I see Harat Kabansi, and I'm sorry if I have mispronounced your name. When we get you promoted, yeah, go ahead and please state your name.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Haran Kebansi. I'm a resident of Urbana. I'm also a member of an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation and Cancel the Rents campaign. I've been here before to talk about evictions. I wanted to bring that up again. Just today, we sent a letter to Sheriff Dustin Heuermann calling on him again to suspend evictions in our community. We were joined by a number of organizations and 687 members of the community who have signed on to our petition. As I'm sure you remember, all 7 members of Urbana City Council on, I believe, October 11th, sent a letter to the sheriff calling on him to stop carrying out evictions in the community. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank everyone on City Council for doing that. It is great to see elected officials responding to the needs and to the calls of their constituents to protect them against a very grave threat to our community. I presented on this before, and I said that the situation was not getting better. Unfortunately, that has continued to be the case. Since I presented, new data has come out, and the number of households at risk of eviction has actually increased slightly. It has not decreased. As we go into the winter and as we face potentially the most dangerous variant of COVID yet, the risk is only increasing. And I just want to remind everyone of this issue. I know there are a lot of important issues to our community, but this is still a huge threat. The number of people at risk of eviction has not decreased. The risk to those who are evicted is only going to increase with the cold season coming. I just want to call on everyone to stay engaged and maintain this commitment to stopping evictions in our community. Sheriff sadly has not acted on this yet. Thankfully, the movement is still growing. Since I presented before City Council, the number of people who have signed on to our petition has more than doubled. So there is really growing community support for this. And I want to thank everyone on council again for sending this call to their call to the sheriff to protect our communities against evictions. And I would call on all elected officials and everyone in the community to maintain this fight. Again, the threat, the number of people threatened isn't going down. The threat is increasing as winter is coming. But I do believe we can do what we need to do to ensure that nobody in our community is forced onto the streets. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would any other member of the public like to address the city council? I don't see any further hands from the public. Do any council members have input from the public they'd like to read into the record?
James.
All right. Yes,
James.
Mayor Mullen.
I'm getting a message saying that viewers are having trouble hearing UPTV tonight. So I wondered if our operators could check on the audio from our end.
Okay, is everyone hearing me okay? Okay, I've had trouble with my microphone in the past too, so. All right, we will move on to staff reports. The first report we have is on the AARP Community Gardens Grant. Who will be speaking to that?
I'm going to share my screen to get us started. Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Storm, and I serve as the City of Urbana's Arts and Culture Coordinator. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. I'm coming to you today to tell you a little bit about the Growing Community AARP Public Arts Initiative. And I'm going to begin by saying that the AARP Community Challenge Grant is described as a quick action project to help make communities more livable for people of all ages. The City of Urbana this year was one in 244 cities selected for grants in 2021. The grants typically support things like COVID-19 mitigation, transportation, housing, diversity and inclusion initiatives, civic engagement, and public places. Our grant proposal checked a number of these boxes, which I hope you'll glean from the following presentation. I want to tell you first a little bit about Growing Community. Growing Community was an initiative that really sought to amplify the work of our neighborhood and community gardens. Urbana is home to a number of vibrant community gardens that have only grown over recent years. We were funded in the amount of $20,000. We did request $30,000, and it's typical for AARP grant applicants to sometimes not receive the full amount that they had requested. We had set out originally to include 6 participating community gardens, and it ended up being that one of the gardens wanted to hold off for a future year. And so it was that we were able to do 5 participating community gardens with that reduced amount as well. That included Learman Neighborhood Community Garden, the Habitat Community Garden, Cunningham Township Community Garden, Victory Park Gardens, and Meadowbrook Gardens. The goal of the program was to combine art and amenities to really amplify their work, but also create more livable spaces in our community gardens in collaboration with many of the garden stewards. We identified things like shade sails or tool lending libraries or additional seating or new benches as some of the amenities that were desirable for various garden spaces. The goal was to celebrate increasing access and vibrancy in our community gardens, but also its livability. We had 7 visual artists paid directly through the grant, as well as contractors, a photographer and videographer that assisted in installation and documentation of the project. Some of our collaborators are listed out here, and I really just wanted to give a snapshot of the impact of this grant and how many partnerships and relationships that were fostered and grown through this collaborative grant. Obviously, one of the things that's very central to this work is the work of Solidarity Gardens, which I'm assuming most on this call are quite familiar with already. But Solidarity Gardens is a consortium of over 18 organizations. It includes not only small farms and neighborhood gardens, but things like our Urbana Free Library, our Park District, and a number of others that are really working around issues of food security and serving neighbors in need through everyone participating as a grower. We also collaborated with the Housing Authority Youth Build program. For anyone unfamiliar with Youth Build, this is a program for students 17 to 24 who've experienced an interruption in their high school experience that has led them to be able to participate in this program that allows them not only to get trade certification, but also to be able to complete their high school diploma as part of a cohort model program. We also collaborated with the Park District and Township, Learman, and Habitat. These were collaborations through garden partnerships, as well as installation specialist Gregory Stallmeyer assisting us, Deuce Construction, the mobile vaccine clinic, Cranert Center and Sam Smith, in particular the Peace Project, our poet laureate, our former Arts and Culture Commissioner, Stacy Robinson, and 2 high school youth programs, Goal Getters of Unit 4 and Self-Made Kings of Urbana School District 116. I want to tell you briefly about our process. The process by which we kind of invited all these groups to collaborate, but also work to get art into these garden spaces began with an initial meeting and outreach, so a needs assessment and input with the gardens themselves, where we identified what is the need that that particular garden has that we might be able to fill with the funding that we received through this grant. And so that's where it was determined that shade was a priority or seating was a priority. Then we introduced a call for art and an open application period. As is typical with Urbana Arts and Culture Program events and any calls for art that we do, we did assemble a jury. That's a jury of members of our community. They're selected not only for social identity diversity, but also maybe experience in different areas of the arts. And they select a top 3 choices of artwork for each garden. And then those are forwarded for the final selection to be made by the gardens themselves. Then notice was given to artists, contracts signed, all of those good things. We did experience some delays with COVID-19 impacting shipping, but in general, following all of that, we were able to move forward with installations with Housing Authority Youth Build and our contractors, as well as a program involving peace pole creation that I'll speak about in a moment. The installations and events are actually planned in collaboration with the gardens. And we also had things like media releases and created a documentation video and a final report to the AARP. So I'm gonna tell you first about this special project that happened within the garden project in general. And that is the introduction of peace poles, something that we've seen around Champaign-Urbana, made possible through the Peace Project, but also the Rotary Club and the Urbana Park District. In this iteration of it, we did bring together goal-getters and self-made kings in King Park on September 11th for an event we called United for Peace. Together with our poet laureate and Stacy Robinson, we had a writer's workshop where folks could write out their feelings around peace and community violence, and what do we do to sort of stand up as leaders and really move forward on a number of these issues. What do we need from each other as neighbors? And that became the framework for thinking about creating peace poles as things that we can put out in the community as part of an international public art project that invites people to meditate on peace in any location. In this instance, we selected the Habitat Garden to be the space where peace poles were going to be installed primarily. And that was because, as many people may recall, we also had a loss of life to gun violence near that street corner just last year. So here we are making a lot of these peace poles, and then they came on display in the Habitat Garden. I'm going to talk for a moment about our selected artists, because of course, as your arts coordinator, I simply want to highlight some of the wonderful artists that made this possible. First is Saba Manetti Tesfaye with Ashe Yamaya's Her Piece. This is now on display at the Habitat Community Garden on a bench. Beth Darling's Excerpts from the Garden is now on display in Habitat on raised garden beds. Caitlin Nelson's Humble Offering is on display at Meadowbrook Park. And Koo Wilson's Flower Girl is at Victory Park Community Gardens. We also have Tropical Punch by Cindy Sampson on display at Learman, and Law Welly's Sunflora Flora Flora at Township Community Garden. I also want to mention the collaborating artists, Sam Smith, Stacey Robinson, Greg Stallmeyer, and Ashanti Files, who all helped kind of offer creative direction on this project. Let's talk a little bit about the sites that were impacted. First, we have Habitat Community Garden. Here's an initial picture before art was installed, right on the corner of Hill and Romine Streets. Here we have Kim Gollings of Habitat giving a tour for the Housing Authority Youth Build students. So they also got a chance to learn about the gardens that were in the neighborhoods they were impacting through their installation work. Here we are installing poles, digging holes for them. And here we are installing raised art on the raised garden beds. You can see that piece by Beth Darling. And here's the finished product here in Habitat. This is what you can find at Hill and Romine Streets now. The peace poles, the bench, and the garden art all together. Next is Learman Community Garden. Here we identified shade as a priority. And this was all identified through garden stewards. We also identified that the picnic tables, the raised beds could all use the sprucing up. So we have here a great group of folks from the Housing Authority Youth Build program. And I should say also in an effort to kind of increase the relationship between the arts program and Youth Build, we had never worked together before. I was able to also visit Youth Build in the classroom in advance, talk about the project, talk about why this project is important to neighborhoods and community members, and really get to know the students as well. And my hope is that I'll be able to involve these students in different projects that we have moving forward. Here we are using the auger for the first time, painting our raised beds. And an interesting fact here was that we actually had added this opportunity to be able to paint the raised beds on after that was a need identified a little later. And I asked, what kind of paint would you like? What kind of color? And it just happened to be that the paint that was selected had been selected by the garden stewards a while back before this project was ever on anyone's mind. And it just so happened to just fit perfectly with the artwork that was selected, and that was entirely unplanned. You can see here just a lot of hard work to get everything painted and organized in our unveiling event, which brought a number of people together. You've probably seen so far members of different commissions, our council people. We had a lot of folks come out and be a part of this project. So if I'm speaking about you, thank you for coming out, of course, and showing up and being a part of these unveiling events. But here you can see Tropical Punch there on the shade sail and all these beautiful new garden beds. We also have Urbana out here and the Park District supporting us. And then of course, Sam Smith here from Cranert, who also was able to put on display some artworks promoting public health created by elementary students that were here, elementary and middle school and high school students. I think it was actually arranged as part of another project. This was corresponding with a celebration honoring the life and contributions of Dick Ziegler. And so this bench was also installed at the same time, and we were able to combine those two events together. Next up is Cunningham Township Community Garden. Here you see we've got Housing Authority Youth Build students working to actually relocate a lot of the raised beds so that this entire space could be made more amicable to events. And shade was another thing that was installed at this location. So here we have folks working together to move all of the raised beds, create more of a perimeter and more of an event space. And here's our unveiling, so you can see the hazy image behind of everyone gathered together for this ribbon cutting. The artwork again being printed on a shade sail, now installed with solar lighting and other things in that garden. We were also able to give out free hot meals at this event that was turned into a harvest celebration. We're getting into fall here if you haven't deduced. So we have free hot meals from Balderotas, as well as vaccines that were offered. And we also had a community mural be painted on the shed. That was it in progress. You can go drive by now and see it completed. We also had clothing donations going on, free pumpkins, free phone signups, and a number of other things that we offered for this season. Next up is Meadowbrook Park Community Garden. Here we identified a tool lending library as the thing that would create more accessibility for the garden to make it so that anyone, regardless of mobility needs, does not have to kind of bring back and forth tools to the garden, but to actually have a communal lending library right there in the garden. So we were able to install artwork right on the toolbox, as well as the raised garden bed. This artwork is called Humble Offering by Caitlin Nelson. And here we are learning about the tool box. And it should be noted that the Park District has an ongoing donation drive happening for tools. So if you are listening and eager to support the tool lending library, you can also donate a tool. And if for any reason the tool box gets a donation that it doesn't need, the Consortium of Solidarity Gardens collaborators will actually find a good tool lending library home for that tool. Last but not least is Victory Park Community Garden. Here we have artwork by Koo Wilson, Flower Girl, also printed on a tool box for a tool lending library, as well as on the raised garden beds. You can see this now along the walking path in Victory Park. And the goal was to also not only create artwork in that area, but to also have it be possible that folks can see it when they're just visiting the park. So here you can see the box and the pieces on the garden beds. And here's our ribbon cutting. So what's most important, of course, is to acknowledge all the folks that made this possible. We had quite a wonderful consortium of artists, as well as great installation support from people like Greg Stallmeyer, also some help from Jane McClintock, Deuce Construction, and the Housing Authority of Champaign County Youth Build Program. All of our partnering gardens are listed here as well. But I think what's more valuable is to hear it a little bit from their voices. So I'm going to show you a brief video so that you can also hear it directly from them. Hold on just a moment. I was moving the Zoom thing and then I moved everything.
The Growing Community Public Arts Initiative was funded by the AARP Community Challenge Grant. The city of Urbana was one of 244 cities across the United States that received this grant this year. This is our first time receiving this grant. And what it is a rapid project, so they're short grants, but they're intended to kind of create something new for the community that creates a more livable space, that helps spread arts and culture, and that helps towns become more accessible to everyone. This is something that this project does very well. To learn more about Growing Community, go to www.urbanaillinois.us/growing community.
I am Sharice E. Hersey. I am the council person for Ward 3 in the city of Urbana. I think it's extremely important for community gardens, mainly because it's the sustainability of the community. The fact that people can come here and just pick some food. I could go make a meal right now, so can somebody else that maybe doesn't get fresh vegetables. So local growth is very important.
My name is Law Welly. The name of this piece is Sun Flora Flora Flora. It was really, really surreal to get to see my piece on such a large scale. I don't think canvases are expensive. I don't usually get to experience it. And so to drive up and see it from a far way away, to see a plaque with my name on it, to realize what a space this was, it's everything that I believe in and try to stand for surrounding me. And so I was getting a little misty yesterday when I got to see it. It was really stunning. It was something I'll never forget.
I'm standing right now in front of Learman Avenue Community Garden. This is on the corner of Learman and Washington Streets in Urbana. It's a fantastic local garden. Over the past several years, it has grown tremendously. What we've been able to do is not only install this art on a shade sail, as shade was something identified as necessary for the garden in order to enhance it and make it more livable, but we also were able to paint a wide variety of the raised beds. So we have artwork and brand new painted tables and amenities here in the garden as a result of the Community Challenge Grant.
My name is Cindy Sampson, and this is my artwork, Tropical Punch. I've been making art ever since I can remember. I mean, I say, it's eating, sleeping, breathing, making art. That's who I am.
My name is Caitlin Nelson. This piece is called Humble Offering. The photos used in the piece are all native plants found in Urbana, many of them from the Anita Purvis Nature Center where I work, and it was created digitally on a tile-like background. I'm so happy. I love Meadowbrook Park, and it feels amazing to see my work displayed in such a beautiful community space.
My name is Saba Manetti Tesfai, and the name of this piece is Ashe Yamaya. So this is a painting of, actually when you see the whole painting, it's a mermaid. It's a girl in a little mermaid costume, and she's in front of the ocean. And the piece is inspired by my want to see more Black and brown people in media, and also just about centering back to your inner child and like doing things that feed your soul and your spirit, and just like living a life that you want to live. I was an intern for Solidarity Gardens at Cunningham Township for a while. My dad's also a gardener, and he prides himself in that, and I helped him a lot when I was little too, so I feel connected to gardening and the earth. So having my artwork in front of a garden feels right for me.
My name is Beth Darling. I'm a local artist and a gardener, and the piece is an excerpt of a larger painting that's a garden that I worked in, a local garden. It's combining my two passions, art and gardening. To see the colors work so well with the artwork on the bench, I just thought that was brilliant, and I love the idea that it's an excerpt of the garden. And I've never seen paintings on a raised bed before. I love raised beds. I love the idea that people can grow their own food here. I love the whole idea, and I was just so pleased to be asked to be part of it.
My name is Ashanti Files, and I am the Urbana Poet Laureate. Today we're standing in front of Peace Poles. This was a project that we started in collaboration with so many other community groups, inviting the young men to interpret and reflect on who they are and who they want to be. And the culmination of that project is the Peace Poles here in this community garden.
My name is Vincent Andujo, and I'm the construction projects manager at Youth Build at Housing Authority of Champaign County. At Youth Build, we try to give them a variety of different things to do. We took these peace poles, dug the holes, and planted them. The young people, they just really gained from just being out in the community and beautifying, the city. Also feeling part of something being planted in the community, and they pass by and they say, well, I took part in that.
My name is Danielle Chenoweth, and I'm the Cunningham Township Supervisor. And this is one of many solidarity gardens that we've helped to create a consortium of gardens in the community to help feed our neighbors in need.
My name is Melissa Stone, and I'm the Cunningham Township Supervisor's Garden Coordinator. I grow the vegetables in this garden as a giving garden, which allows people to come and harvest food when they like or need it.
It's giving them fresh food. We're taking ourselves out of being a desert community. The garden is very diverse. We have people from the Congo in Africa. We have people from Vietnam, from Mexico. It's just a great feeling to be part of a garden community.
I'd like to thank you all very much for picking our garden in our spot. Thank you very much.
The Growing Community Initiative would not have been possible without the tremendous support of the AARP Community Challenge Grant.
I hope you were able to hear that well, and the tech issues of sharing a video on a video are sometimes challenging. So my hope is that you were able to hear those voices, because it's important and powerful to me that you hear directly from the artists that were impacted by this grant that we received. If you drive by some of these gardens now, some of the shade sails are packed away for the winter at the moment, but you will see, and the tool chests as well, you'll see them put back out permanently in the spring. We may do some other kind of unveiling things in the spring just to get people using them. And like I said, if you do want to donate a tool or something, that's also possible between now and when we reopen the gardens in the spring. But I'm very grateful that the city of Urbana was able to receive this AARP grant. I've also had a wonderful experience working with AARP representatives throughout the duration of the project, as questions arose or things like that. And I was able to also present on this project recently at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus as an example, an exemplary project proposal that came from us that the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus wanted to share with their age-friendly communities, neighborhoods and cities. So I was able to present a little bit about it, shout out Urbana, and of course I wanted to share it with all of you so you can hear about the impact of that grant that we received.
All right,
And I
thank you,
welcome any
Rachel.
questions you have.
Are there any questions? I think everybody's in awe of what you just showed us. Yes, Grace.
Yeah, just wanted to say quick, thank you and appreciation, and very powerful, very moving. Definitely great work to everyone involved.
All right, thank you, Rachel. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope to seek this grant again in the future, and the gardens have indicated that they hope this work seeds continued projects in amplifying the gardens and making community spaces of each of them, and of course, making sure that their work gets shared. So keep that in mind as you see grants and other opportunities as well, and send them my way. Thank you so much for your time this
I do
evening.
have a question, real quick.
Yeah.
Although, I love the community garden down on Romine Hill. I love that. I was wondering if there's any opportunity or any chance, there's was it Hamilton Place? I think that's not far from here. Is there any chance that certain apartment buildings or something like that would ever be able to have either roof gardens or nearby gardens also put implanted someplace near, so that the occupants of those particular housing developments would be able to have the opportunity to also grow their own food and have fresh vegetables and so on and so forth? Anything like that in the works?
I really appreciate that question. yes, the short answer is of course yes. The long answer is that a lot of these things are driven by, by neighborhoods, by neighbors coming and seeking that. The resources are there. So Solidarity Gardens is a fabulous consortium of organizations. That's where I would point Neighbors First. So most recently, I'm a member of the City Surplus Subcommittee at the city, and we look at kind of city owned property that we might want to find an interim use for. So recently, the city was also able to grant a proposal to create a garden near on Wood Street. So this would also serve adjacent neighbors and an apartment complex across the street. And it's another example of something that, yes, people can find spaces to create community gardens. They can work together with organizations that can support them, like neighborhood organizations, Solidarity Gardens, being one that maybe brings a few together. And that's where I would point people initially if they're interested. And I'm sure there's probably a wealth of other resources known between all of us here on the call and anyone listening in the community, but those maybe are some initial places that I would think to point someone.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you again, Rachel.
Thank you.
We will be moving on to our next staff report, Equity and Quality of Life Infrastructure Program.
That's me. And I think it's really exciting to be able to follow Rachel on this because she just gave us sort of the full circle of some modest but well thought through investments, which is what the Equity and Quality of Life Infrastructure Program is all about too. If you will remember, this is a $2 million capital project that is intended to be parceled out in in individual projects that are roughly $250,000 each. Less is fine too. We're going to see what our proposals are, and we're ready to launch. We've talked about this a couple of different times. I've been working in conjunction with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission as my sounding board, and they give me advice, and they're going to help me vet the projects. But I wanted to share a few things with you tonight before we launch the program tomorrow. So let me share my screen, and I'll start with just where people can find whatever they might want on this project. So here's our landing page for our website, and it's right smack here in the middle. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you can see that we have the 5 sort of hot buttons in the middle of the web page, and Equity and Quality of Life is right in the middle. So anybody that wants to find out about the program and apply and submit a project for consideration should go there. I want to show you the very simple form that we have for people to make proposals for consideration. And that is, let's see, where's that one? That one I don't seem to have on here. I'm not that good with, I'll go instead to my, to the few slides that I have. The form is a one-page form. It has basically 3 boxes to fill in. You can fill it in online and submit it at the bottom of the form. You just press submit, and it goes to an email address, which is eql@urbanaillinois.us. You could also, if you want to, you can print it out, fill it out by hand, scan it and send it that way, or you can send it to my attention at 400 South Vine. So the website, as I said, you could just go to our main landing page if you want to, but it has the web page itself is urbanaillinois.us/EQL. It's very easy to find. That's this URL. We are going to be issuing a press release first thing tomorrow morning, and then we'll be sending messages out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram that we hope you will help amplify to get the word out. So what kinds of projects are we looking for? Now let me see if I can get this to go. we're looking for small infrastructure projects. So I'm showing you a few of these will be some of the postings that we do. The picture on the left is meant to illustrate a section of street that doesn't have street lights. That's the kind of project we're looking for. If people, anything that would, that people feel would enhance personal safety, whether it's relative to crime or relative to their well-being in terms of if they're a pedestrian, if they're a bicyclist, anything that would enhance their ability to walk through a neighborhood safely, bike through a neighborhood safely, or just spend time in a neighborhood safely. The photo on the right-hand side is a bicycle with no bike rack for it to be chained to. That's another thing that could lead to theft if people are interested. That's another type of infrastructure project we'd be interested in getting proposals on. Here's a few more examples. On the left, you see an area where there is no sidewalk for someone to walk on. So they're missing sidewalks. And on the right-hand side, that's an example of an installation of a curb ramp that someone who has accessibility issues. We're interested in things like that too. So small infrastructure projects that people feel would have a big impact on the quality of life in their neighborhood. For now, we are looking for projects that are in the public right of way because it will allow us to complete them in a relatively short amount of time rather than having to negotiate with private property owners for easements and the like. This is very much a pilot. We want to see how this goes. So for the moment, we're not putting a deadline on any of the submissions. And I don't want people to feel that that they are inhibited in any way from making a proposal. Give us your ideas. If it's not something that we can execute through the Equal program, it might highlight something that we should be considering for a more discrete capital project, or that we already have in a capital project and we just need to do a little bit better outreach so that people know that it'll be included in another project that's coming in the CIP. So as I said, we're planning on launching this tomorrow, and we'll do a lot of social media outreach. We hope you'll help us with that. Any of you can submit a proposal through this. Like I said, it's a real simple form. It's just, tell us where it is and what you want and why you think this would enhance the walkability or safety in your neighborhood. And we do have a scoring sort of framework, which was just to kind of give some structure to it. The BPAC helped me with that. But for instance, if we found ourselves with a lot of streetlight proposals, we might decide in the first wave that we're going to do a bunch of streetlights because that's the most efficient thing to execute. So, the scoring heavily favors low and moderate income neighborhoods as defined by HUD. So people that live in more affluent parts of Urbana can certainly make submittals, but we will be prioritizing low and moderate income neighborhoods first. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'm inspired by what Rachel did to document the sort of the before and the after, and to get the voices of the people who make these proposals as part of the storytelling that we do when we look back after we're able to implement these, so that people can talk about the importance of these investments to their quality of life.
Any questions? Yes, Chris.
Quick question. Quick question. And I see Tim Cowan is in the panels here, so maybe he can answer this. How much is a single light pole?
I think the answer to that depends on whether or not there's infrastructure in place already for the electricity aspect of it. But we did, just as an example, and I wouldn't then divide this by and think that's the cost of a light pole. And Tim, feel free to jump in here. But we did a project a year or two ago. We installed about a dozen street lights along Kinch, and that was about $220,000. So you can get several blocks worth of street lights within the scope of the size project we're hoping to do through this program.
Okay, one more follow-up question. How much does it cost to create a accessible curb? Like there's a standard curb, an old curb, and you want to make it wheelchair accessible. How much is that?
That I'm hoping Tim might jump in on.
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, and I'll just touch on the light poles real quick.
Thank you.
Project Carol spoke about, the poles themselves for construction, installation materials, everything range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 each, depending on the height and a myriad of other factors. If we have to construct, if we have electrical conduit, wiring, etc., that adds in addition to that number, and that can vary as well, anywhere from, I would say, $15 to $30 per foot for that kind of stuff, just for ballpark budgetary numbers. In regards to an accessible curb, I would presume that's more accessible curb ramp, and like an accessible curb ramp for, say, a corner. Usually we're looking at, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 for a single corner, just because the challenges that come with that stuff, because we're tying into existing, usually we're not just replacing a 20 by 20 area. We usually have to chase it back maybe 10 or 20 feet on each side, in addition to all of the other factors that we have to do and retrofit to work with the surrounding area. So those would be some budgetary numbers to consider when you're looking at these type of things.
All right, you done, Chris? All right, Grace?
Yeah, I had a few that I hope are quick questions, I think. First one was, who is selecting the projects?
Like I said, we have the scoring system, and so I will be. We have a couple of what I want to say passes through. So the first pass through will be our people. If we get after we get our first bunch of proposals, we'll make sure that they're actually qualified for the program, so that, for instance, that they're in the right of way and they're actually infrastructure, as opposed to sometimes people might say they want enforcement. That's an operational thing. That's not a piece of infrastructure. So we'll take a pass through and just make sure that we have the proposals that qualify for the program itself, and then we'll apply this framework that we've developed, where we score the projects that are being proposed. And so the scoring takes into consideration things like whether it's in a low or moderate income neighborhood, whether there have been serious crimes committed nearby, whether there have been any pedestrian or bicycle fatalities or serious injuries nearby, whether it's on safe routes to school or path to, it's a route that has been identified in the bicycle master plan or the pedestrian master plan as an important route. So we have a point system for all of that. So I will be working with BPAC to do all that scoring. And then at the end of it all, once we come up with a package, then we will be running that past council, and we'll explain how we've racked and stacked all the projects that we want to do, at least initially. We may find that we have, $4 million worth of projects for $2 million worth of financing, or we might find we only have $1 million worth of projects for $2 million. We don't know yet. So that's why I say I don't want anyone to feel like they can't include something because they don't know how much it's going to cost or whatever. We can work on all of that. But ultimately, I think the council will be accepting or modifying the recommendations of BPAC.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you executive will be sifting them for eligibility and then scoring them with BPAC and then presenting them to council. Is that for final selection, or you said for in addition to BPAC's recommendation?
Yeah, BPAC will be making a set of recommendations based on the scoring and also, constructability. Like I said, we might, if we have a bunch that are in one neighborhood and that would be easier from a constructability standpoint, and we want to make a big impact, even though maybe the scoring suggests that some are not as high priority as one that's maybe far flung in another neighborhood, we might on balance want to recommend, hey, let's do all the ones in this one neighborhood. Or we might say, we've got a whole bunch of streetlight proposals, and from a constructability perspective, that would be a good way to batch it. So they'll be making a proposal to you to then bless and say, yes, we agree with that. That should be the set of projects that moves forward initially. And I don't know, we might do this in several waves. I just don't know, because I don't know what kind of response we're going to get.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering if we could have a kind of more inclusive report available for council or the public, even maybe anonymously. It looks like there's no names on the form, so I guess that shouldn't be an issue. But I appreciate, like you said, being open to other ideas that even if they don't fit within this particular program, it's still, one avenue of public outreach and hearing what the public is wanting. So I was wondering, we could have some kind of raw information for council or the public, just as kind of more survey data information.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay. And then I was wondering if the conditions assessment were going to be considered in this, particularly with like lighting, or I don't know if we have one for sidewalks, I don't think.
Yeah, what's interesting about this is, there's a lot of information already in the pedestrian master plan, the bicycle master plan, and we talked about this at BPAC. Because they were like, we could come up, we could tell you where a lot of these locations are, depending on what you want to focus on. And we really want to give the public an opportunity to say, hey, this is what would really mean something to us. And so there's not a lack of information about where we can spend money. It's where we want to hear from the community where it will be most impactful. Now, I don't think we have the same survey for street lighting that we do for bike routes and walking routes, but that's something I think that we'll be working towards going forward. We just haven't really focused on streetlights and that aspect of our infrastructure yet.
I have a comment I'll save.
I don't know what you're saving it for, Grace, because
comment time,
it's just a presentation. So.
Oh, true. Could I throw? Okay, quick comment. I appreciate this. I think that, bicycle stuff and sidewalk and lighting is definitely important. I just want to be sure that we're keeping it on, equity and quality of life rather than a bicycle and pedestrian program.
Sure, understood. Yep.
Okay, Sharice.
As far as filling out the form online is, because it can be filled out online, or can it be also made into a PDF or something?
You can print it out, or you can just fill it. It's a fillable form online, and then when you're done, you just push a button at the bottom of the form, and it sends it to the email address.
Yeah, I was just checking it out, and I was just wondering if it's also something that, if it's also something that somebody can, if like they don't have time to fill it out, but they just want to download it or something. Is it downloadable at all or anything like that?
Now you're asking something that's a little past me.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know how to do that myself.
Yeah,
but.
we do need a methodology for people to submit.
I mean, I can see that you can
just electronically.
Yeah, I can see that you can do it online, but I was also just wondering if there was a way, a Google form or something, I don't know.
We'll figure out how to put a downloadable form on there too. How's that?
Okay.
And for other applications, we have made the paper forms available in the library and some other places around town, so we could have some paper forms.
And that was going to be my suggestion, would be to print out some and have them at the library for people who don't have printers or don't have access to computers.
Okay.
Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a moment?
Sure. The chair recognizes James.
Yeah, I do. I do appreciate the approach that's being taken here, but we all know algorithms can hide bias, and so I want to make sure that the algorithm that is used that takes into account the neediness of a neighborhood has that at a magnitude that I don't want to say that affluent neighbors can't apply, but it should really skew towards, because of the way we've classified this and what we intend to do with it, it should be the case that if a neighborhood that is rated as in need by HUD would get a project over a neighborhood that is not in that category. So I don't know how the algorithm was set up, but the magnitude of the need of the location should kind of overwhelm the other factors if possible.
So if I may share my screen one more time, just real quick, I'll show you. You're giving us giving me way too much credit calling it an algorithm. Here's the scoring system, and you'll see the third one down is neighborhood need, and that is 30 points, and that does overwhelm the other categories. That was the idea. So and this is on the web page. These are the program details if you want to take a look at that. So anyway, that's exactly what we did.
Okay, and I assume that's a 0 to 30 scale for need.
We talked about doing scales and we decided we weren't going to do scales, but it's just a framework. It's not hard and fast that you get. It's just going to help us rack and stack. It's not going to do the finely graded. That's what BPAC is going to help with. We're going to talk through. Okay, we have this general ranking. Now let's start to put some qualitative thinking to it as opposed to simply quantitative thinking to it.
All right, thank you, Mary Alice.
All right, I relinquish the chair back to James, and thanks.
Yes, Mary Alice.
I just wanted to make a suggestion for when this comes back to City Council. I think it would be great if the addresses, locations could be geocoded, could be put on a map so that we can see the distribution of where the projects are. That would be helpful.
Yep.
All right. I
think Chandra has a question.
Okay. Yes, Chandra.
It wasn't necessarily related to this, though I do appreciate getting the details on this, and I look forward to seeing, as Mary Alice just suggested, a map of where all the locations are. I wondered if we could have an update on like the co-responder model and how that's going. I don't know if you are prepared to give it today or the next meeting, but at some point.
That's not on the agenda, but can we?
That's why I'm just asking at some point.
Yes, absolutely. We look forward to it.
All right, thank you, Chandra. Grace, did I see your hand pop up there for a second? Okay. All right, we're going to move on to our still very lengthy agenda. And the first item of business is ordinance number 2021-11-048, an ordinance revising the fiscal year 2022 annual budget amendment number 4. And who is going to present on this? Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Actually, Aliana Robinson, who is our financial analyst, is going to do this presentation. Before she gets started, I wanted to quickly ask if Borema could promote Deputy Chief Damon Dade to panelist in case there are questions about the SAFER grant. I know he's here, but not promoted. So I'm going to give it to Ali with that.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I will be presenting to you the 4th budget amendment to fiscal year 2022 budget. I will go through this list of items revising the budget accordingly. So I will gladly answer any questions at the end. But first item, which is under general fund, the budget items. These are a number of planned purchases and projects that didn't get completed in fiscal year 2021 budget. And so this is just a matter of timing of expenditures. So we carry over those unspent funds to this fiscal year. The second item, which is just a correction. So on the first budget amendment we did this year, we had to move funds from the general fund to the VERF for the purchase of utility trailer. However, the transfer of funds out of the general fund didn't get included on that amendment. And so this is just to reconcile interfund transfers. The next item, which is two things, a total of 10,000 will be taken out of the legal salary line item. So this is to pay for two things. The first one, which is the Illinois High School Association sponsorship for the boys basketball state tournament, which is about $7,500 for the years 2021, 22, and 23. However, we only budgeted $2,500 for this year. And so an additional $5,000 would be needed to fully fund for that. And the second part of that, which is additional $5,000 needed for the completion of the meeting and agenda software project. The next item under executive department, we are going to reallocate $180,000 from a salary line item to legal services for outside counsel services provided for the city. And the next one from a couple of items from Public Works. First one, so in the fiscal year 2022 budget, we approved, or the city approved, $15,000 for the computer-aided design and drafting and paper software licenses. However, this was budgeted under a salary line item, so this is a correction as well. So moving funds from the salary line item to the appropriate line item, which is the technology services line item. The next one, also from Public Works. So end of November, Public Works have one electrician and one traffic signal technician employed. So due to vacancies, we are requesting to transfer $30,000 of unspent funds from a salary line item to pay for contractual services, which will allow Public Works to maintain essential services while the hiring process continues. SAFER grants, the City of Urbana Fire Department has been awarded the SAFER grants, about $1.71 million to hire 6 firefighters. These positions are expected to be filled beginning February 21st of 2022, so next year. And so this grant will cover salary and wages and benefits on a reimbursement basis for a 36-month time period. So for this amendment, this will only affect fiscal year 2022 budget. So we have estimated a total of expenditures of about $275,000. Of that, about $200,000 will be eligible for reimbursement, and about $75,000 is expected to be the city's portion, which are the expenses not eligible for reimbursements. And over the life of the grant, which is from fiscal year 2023 to 25, we have estimated about $176,000 to be the city's portion. Again, the ineligible expenses for reimbursements. The next one, Human Resources and Finance Department is requesting $25,000 to be budgeted for external recruitment assistance, which this includes for the Director of Community Development Services position. The city received a donation of $3,000, which will be used to fund an additional bureau for downtown Urbana. The Illinois Arts Council Grant Agency has awarded the city with a grant of $5,700. So this will be used to hire a part-time program specialist for the Urbana's Arts and Culture program. And the next one is regarding the emergency shelter. So the city will dedicate $50,000 to fund for the low barrier shelter. Now the agreement with CU at Home is on the same agenda, so you'll hear more about that later on. Under Capital Improvement Fund, again, this is another rebudget item. So this is just requesting about $19,000 of unspent funds from the last fiscal year budget to be carried over to fiscal year 2022, which will be used for project contingency. And under storm utility fund, we are requesting $18,000 to be reallocated to cover for emergency repairs regarding the Vine Street stormwater pumps. The next one, under local motor fuel tax fund. So the Washington Street Bridge recently received a low limit based on structural evaluation from IDOT. So due to this, we are amending to make some changes to the fiscal year 2022 funding in the 2021 capital improvement plan, which will repurpose funds from a couple of projects approved in the fiscal year 2022 that are in the lowest priority. So to accommodate this reconstruction or improvement to the Washington Street Bridge as the highest priority for this fiscal year. So under vehicle and equipment replacement fund, this is another rebudget item. So there are a couple of scheduled replacements that were not completed in fiscal year 2021. So we are just carrying over those unspent funds to this fiscal year. And the next item, reallocate payroll costs in ARMS programming fund. So in fiscal year 2022, the city approved a budget to pay for staff salaries for the ARMS program. However, this will no longer continue as the employee was hired by MedCat and the city is now being billed monthly for that ongoing work to support the program. So this amendment is just to reduce payroll costs related line items and to increase technology services line item from which the bills are being paid. And under Community Development Grants Fund, so HUD has entitled the city a grant up to about 2.9 million for the home ARP program. And this program is to assist individuals or households who are homeless, at risk of homelessness, and other vulnerable populations. So
Excuse me just a minute, Ileana, I'm sorry. You're fading in and out. Your volume is fading in and out. So sometimes I can hear you and sometimes you're barely coming in.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know if it's the position of your microphone or your hand or what it is, but it's, I can barely hear you sometimes. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's just,
that's okay. Thank you. Can you hear me clearly now?
You're faded out all the way out now. So
it's coming and going. I'm concerned that it may not be something that we can address at this moment.
All right, I will try to speak closer to the microphone. Hopefully that will fix that. Can you hear me clearly now, or is it still?
It's still happening. I didn't know if it was you. Now I think it's on your end, but I didn't know if it was an issue with UPTV or my computer or on your end.
That wouldn't be it. It seems to be with your connection there.
Or maybe
it comes and goes. Even while you're talking straight, it drops and raises again. So, but we're going to just have to soldier on.
Yeah, we'll just soldier on. I just wanted you to be aware.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right, I'll continue on. And there's not a lot of items left over to go over. So, where did I leave it? Oh, so the home ARP group program. So about 5,000 of that 2.9 million, which is about $148,000, will be budgeted for administration and planning. So that includes preparation of an action plan that will be approved by the city council. And so of that amount, $25,000 will be allocated for administrative costs, which this will increase revenues in the Community Development Special Fund, as you can see up there, the $25,000. And the last item I want to point out is the budget unspent CDBG and home fund grant. Again, that is just a rebudget items where we are carrying over unexpended funds to this fiscal year 2022 budget. And again, it's just a matter of timing of expenditures related to these grants. So I think those are the things I wanted to point out. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, Mary Alice, I saw your hand first.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Elizabeth, thank you for taking my phone call earlier today. I just wanted to confirm, because I think that this actually came up when we were approving the actual budget in the end of June, that we had talked about the fact that we had a person for our legal services was on contract. And I think at the time I had asked why we had a salary line for that. So I just wanted to confirm that the salary line the amount that we're moving is technically would have been spent on a person who was hired by the city, who worked for the city as a permanent. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we're not adding $180,000 to that line item expense. We're just taking what we would have paid a city attorney and putting it into this.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I went through all of this, and I think that a lot of the stuff is rebudgeting or things coming in different fiscal years and so forth. But there are 3 items on here that are impacting the general fund, if I'm understanding this correctly. One is the emergency shelter, which would be an additional $50,000 that's unexpected. 2 is the 25,000 for the external recruitment assistance that wasn't originally budgeted. And the 3rd one was the kind of cost match, or the items that weren't paid for by the SAFER grant. Those are the 3 items that I can pick out here that are in addition. Is that correct, Elizabeth? And
yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's like we're spending basically $170,000 more.
Yes, and those are one-time expenditures, so.
Right, they're not reoccurring expenditures.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And then my last question, which is kind of not related, but since Sheila's here, I'm going to ask anyway. Sheila, do you know when, what the timeline plan is for the action plan for the home funds?
We're in the process of creating a request for proposal that will issue in January to hire a planner to create the plan. And then once it's created with the consortium members, then we will bring that plan back to council for approval. And at this point, HUD has only approved the administrative portion of the grant. And once that action plan is approved by HUD, then they'll release the balance of that $2.9 million.
And so is this, this isn't where we, with Chodo funds, where we do it for the county, right? This is specifically for Urbana.
No, it is home funds that are spent countywide. Okay. But it's only for Chodo funds will not come out of this. It's really for project specific to address the needs outlined in the memo.
So the 2.9 million is for the county or for Urbana?
County. It's a countywide program. Yep.
I just wanted to make sure where the funds went.
Sure. And it may be that the project ends up being completed in Urbana, but it has to serve countywide residents.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Yes, Sharice.
I guess I just want to understand Washington Street Bridge. Where exactly is the Washington Street Bridge that you're talking about that needs reconstruction? Because for some reason, I don't know, I was thinking about the Vine Street, the railroad track there, but.
I'll jump in on this. This is Tim Cowan, Public Works Director. It's basically East Washington, right as you're heading out of town. You go past the school there, and right before you split between, we have residential on the north side and then a field on the south side there. There's a drainage way that passes through there, and we've got a structure there that has recently received a load rating. And with that load rating, just a little bit more background, it's been limited to 12 tons, which does impact the MTD pretty substantially because they've got routes that would normally be running that cannot right now.
Okay, so it's before you get to High Cross Road?
Yes, well before that. It's actually closer to the school. It's probably within
Prairie. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it's
I'm a
Right
visual
past-
person, so I'm trying
Yeah,
to visualize it.
It's right past Smith Road,
Okay.
if that helps at all. It's probably 1,000 or 2,000 feet to the east of that. Well,
Oh.
before you get into where we have just undeveloped area, and well, probably a half mile west of High Cross at least.
Okay, so it's before you get out to the Scottswood area?
Yes, it's right as you get to that area.
Okay. All right, I was also wondering, because we're going to be taking, can IDOT help with that at all? Or since they evaluated it, is there any monies that will be coming from them at all to
They-
kind of help that?
Yeah, as of now, there's no grant type assistance for this project. We could certainly allocate state motor fuel tax funding, but how we're allocating our other state motor fuel tax funding, it made more sense to allocate this from a local motor fuel tax standpoint and do this quicker, rather than going through the state funding process. And right now, the state funding provides the greater amount of money. So usually we reserve the state funds for larger projects. In the scheme of things, this is technically a smaller project. I think the other two we have on the agenda tonight are 1.4 and 1.6 million, and this one is valued, I think, a little under 700,000 for everything.
Okay. All right, thanks. I appreciate that, Tim.
Not a problem.
All right, thank you. Grace?
Thanks. I had a few. I'll try and go quick. Maybe starting big picture. I was wondering if you could give a little context to the impact on the general operating fund and it being 28.58% of reoccurring expenditures, because I imagine that the reoccurring expenditures are also covered by other funds. So I was wondering if you could give some context to like where the target or the historical marker is for percent of reoccurring expenditures from the general fund.
I can jump in on that. So we've been targeting 25 fund balance is 25% of recurring expenditures, and we really think that's sufficient for any unexpected needs. And in fact, at some point we'll ask you to amend our financial policies to reflect that, but I don't think we're at any risk of dipping into the fund balance too far at this point. Also, when we complete the forecast, we'll update our estimate of what fund balance looks like, and I expect it'll look a little bit better than that even.
Thank you. Then the next one was about the home American Rescue Plan stuff. And so you're saying that 25,000 for administrative costs and then about 120,000 for the action plan. Is that correct? And is there an outside organization conducting that since it's for the county? Or just if you could explain a little bit of those cost expenditures.
Sure. Sheila. The home ARP program was designated by HUD to assist individuals or households who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. This did come out of the Congress of the funding that was approved in March. So the city of Urbana's allocation, or actually it's the Home Consortium's allocation, was the $2.9 million. However, they released 5% of that for planning and administration. And so we've guesstimated that, Braden and Mai's time will be maybe $25,000. So I like to budget, worst case scenario. And then, like I said, we are issuing a request for proposal for assistance to write that plan document. And so those funds will be used for that. Once HUD approves the action plan, then the balance of the funds will be released and we'll have an additional administrative budget that we can use to implement the plan.
And is that exclusively Urbana staff with your department, or is those costs also like outside?
Yes. No, it's for Urbana staff. We are the administrator of the Home Consortium, so it will be for us and any consultants that we hire to help us write the plan.
And so you're saying maybe outside consultants and overtime for existing staff? Is that right?
I don't necessarily know about overtime. It may just be that, our time may be spent in this area rather than another area. So, we're we're winding down on the COVID grant. And so instead of spending our time on COVID funding and planning, we might spend our time here. I imagine most of the staff time is going to be oversight of the request for proposal process and administrating whatever contract comes out of that.
Okay, I think I need to ask more questions at another time to understand, because I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around full-time staff being paid extra to work in like work time, but I will work on that.
It's not necessarily extra. It's just when with the grants, we bill out our staff time based on tasks. So we keep timesheets, whether I'm working on CDBG or whether I'm working on home, whether I'm working on COVID, and we bill each of those grants based on the amount of time that I have spent there. And that's a requirement of HUD. So since we've got this funding, we need to have a salary line item that we can bill our time to. It's not like I'm going to be getting an additional $25,000. It's just that when we break out how I spend my time daily, part of my time will obviously be spent towards this project.
Okay, thank you. And then other question was about, or did someone adding to that? Other question was about legal services fees. So is that correct that you're saying that $180,000 is historically what we would pay for a year for a full-time city attorney?
So that is various things. So that's, let's see. So about like, we estimated $16,000 monthly for general legal services, plus any other specialized needs. So that is just an estimate we did, not necessarily to for attorney or Elizabeth, you want to add more to that?
Yeah, so I think the question was more about what would we have been paying a city attorney if we had one on staff, and I don't have that exact number at my fingertips, but I will say we have 2 attorney positions that we previously staffed that are not currently staffed, and between those 2 positions and the benefits that go with those 2 positions, I think this is kind of I'm going to say a fair exchange. We're not spending more than we would overall than we would have otherwise spent on salaries for those positions.
Okay, and then is this for year, like fiscal year to date, or is this one payment for the whole fiscal year anticipated the next part of this year?
This amount, so originally at the start of the year when we did the budget, we didn't know how long we'd continue to use outside services for this. At this point, this estimate anticipates that we'll continue to use outside services for the remainder of this fiscal year.
Okay. And it is in the detailed being billed hourly, correct? This is just what we expect for overall for the fiscal year?
Correct. Anytime we use outside counsel, they bill us hourly for their time, yes.
And I guess I'm just wondering too, maybe not for getting into today, but just an idea of if it's possibilities, it seems like it would be to pay those services to another attorney, since we don't have like one city attorney. Just for example, ideas about if council wanted help from someone of their selection for like drafting resolutions or asking questions or something. It just seems like since we don't have one appointed city attorney, that there's nothing that says that it has to go to one particular person or agency.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Carol or the mayor if they want to take that one. That's not really my area.
Well, we do have one appointed city attorney, and it's Dave Wessner. He just happens to be a lawyer in a private law firm, but he was appointed as the city attorney. So this is not the legal costs that get charged to that line are not exclusively to Dave and his law firm. We have other counsel that represents us in various legal matters, and we typically have a couple of lawsuits cooking at any given point in time, and depending on the nature of it, we are represented by other folks. So it's not just charges to Dave Westner's law firm, but he is appointed. He is the city attorney.
I think we'll have to look into that because it was listed as vacant when we did this last round of appointments and we did not appoint him as such.
Oh, really? I thought we did.
Nope, that was listed as vacant and we did not vote on getting him in. So if
Okay.
it was historical or something, but no.
Okay.
All right, are you done, Grace? I'm sorry, it appears my video is locked up to
Yes.
me, but I'm sure you all can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right, were there any other questions? If there are no other questions, I would need a motion for approval, and can this go on the consent agenda? It cannot because it's a budget amendment. Okay.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. I'll make a motion to send ordinance number 2021-11048, an ordinance revising the fiscal year 2022 annual budget amendment number 4 to City Council with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Mary Alice, and the second, Sharice. Any further discussion? Yes, Chandra.
I just had a quick question on the IHSA sponsorship. If there was a pledge in 2019, how come it wasn't fully budgeted for this year, I guess?
It was an oversight during the budgeting process. We've done 2,500 in the past for the IHSA wrestling, but we were increasing this along with our other community partners for the basketball tournament, and that was an oversight. So next year it will be at the 7,500.
And I'm correct, there was no tournament in 2020 at all, right?
Oh,
Any other questions? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Sorry, thought I hit that unmute. For Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey. Ms. Hersey,
yes, yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes. Moving on to our next agenda item,
Here.
resolution number.
I need to vote too.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Mayor.
Mayor Marlin.
I vote yes. Thank you.
There was too much of a pause there. I was ready to shoot right on to our next agenda item. Let's take up resolution number 2021-12047R, a resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for West Windsor Road resurfacing project. Tim, are you taking this?
I am, thanks. This project was approved in our capital improvement plan in 2021. The highlights of this is going to be west of Ray Street to our west boundary at Wright Street along Windsor. This is an asphalt portion of road. We're planning on a mill and overlay of this section with some other minor patching and stuff along that section of roadway. Just to clarify anybody that's familiar, this is not the section of Windsor in which we're in litigation in right now. That is the next section to the east of this. We are essentially, our engineering division is all but ready to engage a design engineer to begin the design of this. The first step of that is obviously passing this resolution. So whereas the city with the capital improvement plan, we approved this because this is state motor fuel tax funded, we are required to pass a formal resolution using IDOT's form for the resolution for improvements under the Illinois Highway Code, which we have to sign off and then submit to IDOT for review and approval, which you'll see in addition to the memorandum detailing this. It's page 2 of this. And then we've got a location map. It's page 3 of this, showing the extents of this. This section is just under a mile long. It is a very wide section of roadway, which is partially what has driven the cost substantially higher, or if it may appear high, that is why. It's because it's a substantially wide section of roadway through there. The allocated amount of 1.4 million is slated to cover the preliminary engineering, the design engineering, construction engineering, and then the construction itself as well. And I would welcome any and all questions.
Yes, do we have questions? I see Mary Alice.
So, Tim, I know that we've been having issues with the costs lately, and this is, of course, it hasn't been sent out for request for bid yet because we don't have it completely done. How certain are you that we're going to fall in the 1.4 million range?
To be quite frank, I'm not certain. When we were doing this estimates and things of this nature, we at that time had not really, when we adopted the CIP at that time, we had not necessarily adjusted for the COVID pricing, but that could or could not be as big of an effect going into this year. So it's unknown at this point. I don't think that we're going to be far out of line if we are at all. But that's what, to be determined at this point still.
But it seems like this is the next step in order for us to get the funds from IDOT, and then we would potentially see something that to rectify the difference once we know the final cost. Is that right?
Yes, correct. So this is kind of step one, as we say, this is what we think it's going to be, and we think this is going to cover everything. Tell IDOT, they put it on their books as basically being allocated funds that they've distributed to us. And then when we get the engineers engaged, once they get through the design, we'll have a preliminary estimate that will update these numbers to see if we think we need to file a supplemental resolution for this or not. And then obviously the bidding will, at that point, I think if our preliminary engineering estimates come back from the designs and they're within line with what we've got allocated here, I wouldn't go to the length of doing a supplemental resolution at that time. I would wait until bids to see if we think we're still in line with everything. But yeah, this would be the next step.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Yes, Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and the work on this road project. I have been noticing the condition on Windsor for quite a while, especially at that Lincoln intersection, is very, very rough. So I appreciate that this is being addressed. I think it is a very rough section of road. And you mentioned something about litigation further east on Windsor. I don't know if you could just share, not a full story maybe, but a little bit, because it seems like also there was maybe issues further west, but then that stops being Urbana right at Wright Street. Is that right? So we're doing Wright Street over, and I didn't know if you could just clarify if you said east or west and a little bit about what that issue was.
Yes, our cutoff, our west boundary is Wright Street. So any issues to the west are Champaign issues. To the east, we the city of Urbana constructed a project, I think probably 5 or 6 years ago at this point, where we had some construction issues that we have been working through between ourselves, the contractor, and attorneys to rectify those issues. We have done some operational patching on that section this year just to kind of address the biggest operational issues. But I'll let, if Carol, if you think you need to go into any more detail, I'll let you go into more detail on that litigation status.
I'm happy to give a more detailed briefing in closed session if anyone's interested, but the gist of our complaint is that we received a road that was built to a substandard condition, and that is the nature of the litigation. And as I said, if anyone's interested in more detail, I can provide that in a closed session.
And it was more than 5 years ago. All right, Grace, do you need anything else?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, don't see any other hands raised. So I think we could put on the consent agenda, and we could with a recommendation for approval. So could I get a motion to that effect? Sharice, are you signing up to make that motion?
I'd like to move that for resolution number 2021-12-047R, resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code State Motor Fund Tax for West Windsor Road resurfacing project be moved to City Council for approval.
On the consent agenda?
On a consent agenda.
Did I hear that as well?
Yes, on a consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jaya, for the second. Any other discussion? Yes, Grace.
Jay, I love the cameos of your cat. I just want to, that makes me smile.
I confess this is a question, but it's also relevant to the next one. So I don't know if I could just say it before we vote, ask.
Is it relevant to the current one?
It is. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead then.
So I'll ask, and if nobody wants to answer, I guess that's that. But I was wondering, what is the total amount of the state motor fuel tax pot of money?
Tim, can you give us that?
I've got our 2021 numbers that I can provide that we have a beginning or the ending balance from our state motor fuel tax funds within our 2021 CIP were 4.16 million. With that being said, I would also offer the caveat of when I came into this position, we had upwards of 30 open sections, which would be open projects in IDOT's terms. And we've been going through and essentially rebalancing the books. The process from IDOT is we say, hey, this is a $2 million project. And if it's 1.8, we have to close that out so they know we still have $200,000 available. So that 4.16 is with a grain of salt because we have been closing a number of those sections and making sure that the books are, or the budgets are balanced. So that number will change going into the next CIP.
Thank you.
And it is a moving target, right? The state
Correct.
fuel tax is a flat rate, right? It's not.
For us, it's based on our population. They have a number and then they allocate that based on population for municipalities, and we get distributions typically monthly.
But they collect a flat rate. It's not affected by cost of fuel.
Correct.
Right. Okay. It's just gallons.
The calculation's a little bit more convoluted because I think it's different between regular fuel and diesel, but yes, generally speaking, that is correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions before we have a vote? All right. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Mr. Evans.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes and will be on the consent agenda with recommendation for approval. Next up would be resolution number 2021-12-048R, resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code, state motor fuel tax for Philo Road, Colorado Avenue, and Anderson Street resurfacing project. Tim.
All right. So this is another one that was in our CIP. Again, it's kind of at the same point that the Windsor Road is. We're ready to engage an engineer to begin doing the preliminary engineering design, all of that stuff. This is hot mix asphalt milling and resurfacing, pavement patching. We're probably going to have a little bit more curb and gutter removal, some ADA improvements, access improvements, just because this is it's got more basically residential and commercial establishments that are adjacent to this. That being said, when we were looking at prioritization for projects last year, these three, both Philo Road, Colorado, and Anderson, were all very high on our list. And it just happened to be that they were contiguous. So we felt we should put all those together to try to gain economy of scale for improving these streets. This is also planned to be state motor fuel tax funded. The anticipated value is 1.6 million for all improvements, including preliminary design, construction engineering, and construction itself. We also have the same state form for the resolution for improvements under Illinois Highway Code for this project as well, and a location map at the end just showing the extents of this. I guess I would take any questions.
Right, Mary Alice.
So this one's a little bit different in that under the financial impact, it's got it split over 2 years in the original CIP. So is the intention that we're going to be spending $265,000 this fiscal year, and then we'll see in our budget the 1.3 million in the next fiscal year?
Yeah, essentially, because of the timeline in which this is going to occur, it's likely that we end up expending at least a portion, if not all, of the 265 in this fiscal year, and then the next one we will collect bids and be spending that in the next fiscal year. And
Okay.
Windsor could or could not do that. It's going to depend on the timeline for which we get bids obtained. But at this point in time, I would anticipate the bids coming. There's potential for spring to summer bids still, but we'll be straddling the fiscal years is my guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, next up is Chris.
Yeah, Tim, I noticed that there's a fire station on Philo Road in that corridor. Are these three roads, Colorado, Philo, and Anderson, is it Anderson? Are those frequently used by emergency vehicles, and how would construction of the Philo portion allow for the fire trucks to get through?
I can't really, I'm sure Philo is used pretty frequently with the fire station located there. Colorado and Anderson, I would guess, is substantially less. Colorado, probably somewhere in between. However, during construction, because this is a milling and filling process, generally there's going to be two-way access available at all times along the roadway. It'll just be a moving operation. Typically, there will be some closures of entrances and things like that, but we'll have that phased in a way that nobody is out of service for an extended amount of time. And with the fire station, we'll make special considerations for them to make sure if their entrance is being affected, that it is essentially, we need to provide them. One way we do it is we basically will cut off one side of your access and do it while your other side remains open. So we'll certainly work through those details with our designers and our fire department.
Right, thank you. Grace.
Thanks. For this section, I was wondering, so, okay, first of all, it seems like this was already part of the CIP and it's just changing around the money coming from this year instead of spread out over 2 years. Is that right? We're already planning on this?
Yeah, this is already in our CIP. And actually in our CIP, I believe it actually spreads it over this year and next year. The way that we have it in our CIP, we've got the 265 in FY22 and the 1.335 in FY23. We had that was done anticipating the timeline as such. I think that's probably going to end up I think that's how it's going to end up eventually.
Okay, because I was going to ask about the assessed need of those sections, because unlike the other one, at least that part of Philo that I drive regularly doesn't seem that bad, but I'm not a road expert. And I know that you gave us a really nice report with all of the road assessment and your scoring thing. So just checking that it seems like it would be in there, although it's not in this particular packet. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think this is just me recollecting off the top of my head, but I believe that section of Philo or the section of Windsor that we're doing, all three sections were on average, I think, around a 30 to 35 PCI. So that's a 0 to 100 scale. Just for reference. And then I think Philo was in that same range. It was right in the 30 to 35 range. And I believe Colorado was slightly higher than that. And then Anderson, I think, was actually slightly lower than that as far as condition goes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And that takes into account the use on the road too, right, Tim?
Our prioritization takes into account the use on the road. The condition itself does not. But yes, our prioritization matrix that we kind of shared with you guys during council training, yes, that it takes into the roadway classification. So Philo is classified as a collector, whereas I think Anderson's local street, Windsor's an arterial. So.
All right, Mary Alice, could you take the chair for a second if you're handy?
Yes, I'm happy to. Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm eating something. The chair recognizes James.
All right, thank you. So Tim, this is just going to be resurfacing, right? There will be no like safety enhancements or such considered during this?
Correct. It's going to be essentially resurfacing. The safety enhancements would be limited to sidewalk, ADA compliance, access improvements.
How about the assessment of the need of a crosswalk? Because there's a lot of pedestrian traffic about midway between Philo and Cottage Grove, near the bus stop on the south side there. And I think if in the long term, it would be good to look at the possibility of crosswalk with some signage around it.
This is on Colorado.
This is on Colorado, yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about it with our designers. We can certainly look into that.
We could maybe address it with some of the things we're talking about in ARPA or other area improvement.
Sure.
But it just, if we're going to be doing this, I wanted to get that in your mind.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary Alice.
All right. I relinquish the chair back to James.
Right. Any other questions, or are we ready to make a motion? I don't see any questions. So would someone make a motion?
I'll move for recommendation for approval on consent agenda resolution number 2021-12-048R, resolution for improvement under the Illinois Highway Code State Motor Fuel Tax for Philo Road, Colorado Avenue, and Anderson Street resurfacing project.
Thank you, Grace.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary Alice, for the second. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Next thing will be a resolution number 2021-12-049R, a resolution approving a funding agreement with CU at Home, or for CU at Home Winter Shelter. And who will be giving us an update on this?
I'd like to ask that Braden Belcher be promoted to a panelist, and he'll be given the update.
All right, thank you, Sheila.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay.
Hi, Braden. We hear you fine.
Great. So before you this evening is a resolution approving a funding agreement between the City of Urbana and CU at Home for the operation of 2 emergency low-barrier winter shelters. As outlined in the attached agreement, the $50,000 grant expenditure to CU at Home will be paid out of the city's general fund. And as Eliana mentioned earlier, that'll be a one-time payment. And the allowable costs under the grant are outlined on page 3 of the agreement. So the low barrier winter shelters will provide daily services and overnight shelter from December 20th, 2021 through April 15th, 2022. One of the shelters will house men and the other shelter will house women. The shelters will have a maximum capacity of 25 men and 10 women per night. Currently, Champaign County does not actually have an emergency low barrier shelter for individual men and women who are experiencing homelessness. And this is because back in August, CU at Home initiated dry policies at their current shelter at 70 East Washington Street. And the reason they instituted these dry policies was in response to some safety concerns for staff as well as their clients. So because of these policies, this opened up a crucial need for a low barrier shelter for individuals who are screened out of the 70 East Washington location due to substance abuse issues or for individuals who present under the influence of alcohol or drugs. See You at Home has secured one location in downtown Champaign to house the men's shelter, and they are currently working with partner agencies to secure a location to house the women's shelter. See You at Home is also in the process of hiring professionals to staff each location, and that will include support staff, individuals who have training or background in counseling or substance abuse treatment, as well as security professionals to provide safety at both locations. So the operations of the low barrier winter shelters will be overseen by a steering committee of representatives from each funding agency, and this includes the City of Urbana. The role and responsibilities of the steering committee are outlined in Section 7 of the attached agreement. So I'll take any questions you have about this agreement at this time.
All right, Chris.
Okay, so today is December 6th, and you want to be open by December 13th, is that right?
So they are working very hard. Like I said, they have secured the location for the men's shelter, and they're hoping to open that as quickly as possible. They are still trying to hire individuals. So, you know, it's been a quick turnaround trying to get this off the ground. So the target date is the 20th. I was told in a meeting today that it's possible See You at Home will be able to open the men's shelter earlier. But like I said, they are still trying to find a location for the women's shelter, but they're working with several churches in and around downtown Champaign to secure that location. So again, it's been a quick turnaround to try to get both of these shelters off the ground. It's been a lot of work, you know, for not only See You at Home, but a lot of the other agencies that are helping out. So the 20th is that target date, but they're hoping once they have the funding secured, once they have the staffing and the location secured, they're hoping to get them open as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mary Alice.
So this, I believe it was the same shelter that came up to Township last Monday. And I noticed that there are some differences here. So in Township, we were giving them a monthly amount. And in this one, it's a flat amount as I read it. Is that correct? It's a flat amount of 50,000 regardless of the number of days they're open?
That's correct. I can't speak too much to the township's agreement, but the way that this is written, they will invoice us, you know, either biweekly or monthly for their expenses, and then we will reimburse them up to $50,000.
And then the other thing that is different is a termination clause. So is it standard to have a termination clause of 30-day written notice? Is that standard in ours?
Maybe Sheila could answer that. So I will defer to her on that one.
Yes, Mary Alice, that's typically what is in our contracts and agreements is a 30-day.
So since we're providing a flat amount, if for some reason something happens in January and they decide that they have to close because of some unforeseen complication, does that still mean that the city pays 50,000, or is there some way it's prorated?
We will be processing payments based on a reimbursement. So they'll bill us, we'll review, make sure that they met all of the guidelines, and then process payment. So it's not like December 21st, we're going to cut a check for $50,000. That's just our maximum contribution towards the project.
So I guess that begs the question in terms of how does that invoicing work? Do they have a certain amount every month that they spend and then they divvy it up amongst the contributing people?
So it's for what we are reimbursing them for operational expenses. So, and those are outlined on page 3. So See You at Home has said that they are interested in most likely a bi-weekly reimbursement, just because as they're getting these shelters up and running, they'll have a lot of expenses. So that, you know, could be rent for the locations, you know, fuel for the vehicles that they're transporting people around in, you know, things like that. So as they have those expenses and they send those to us, you know, in an invoice, most likely at the beginning, that'll be like a bi-weekly payment or maybe monthly, but it's for operational expenses in sort of administering or operating both of these shelters. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Grace.
Thank you. I didn't know if you could clarify for the public who maybe didn't watch some of the other meetings like town board about this, about accommodating individuals who identify as LGBTQ or non-binary, and, you know, just assuring that there are places for that. That my understanding is that it's not a strict, I mean, it kind of is a men and women's shelter, but also by self-identifying, and that if people feel uncomfortable or don't fit into either of those boxes, that there are some creative options. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes, it'll be, they will be assigned to the shelter as that they present as when they present. They, the 70 East Washington location will be the centralized intake area. So individuals who need shelter will present there. And then based on how they are self-identifying, that is, you know, which shelter they'll be put into. And if you look in the agreement, and this is something that we mirrored with Cunningham Township in terms of the reporting, just to ensure that, you know, it is inclusive, to ensure that they are, that, you know, the shelters are low barrier. The steering committee is requesting regular updates on, you know, numbers, who's being admitted, who has been, have there been people who have been turned away? If so, why? You know, requesting a written explanation if there are individuals who are turned away for whatever reason. So built into that oversight and governance of the shelter are, you know, protections for, again, just to ensure that the shelter is low, does remain low barrier and does remain inclusive. And so, and there's also in the agreement, there's a clause that speaks to that as well in terms of non-discrimination for individuals who present.
And could we, you know, as council or the public, have a summary of that kind of reporting?
Yes. So the steering committee, I believe, I believe it's a monthly report. I need to double check on that, but that can be provided if you're interested. Again, it'll be, we're requesting that they input the data into HUD's homeless management information system, which again tracks demographics, length of time homelessness, data like that. So information like that can be shared if you would like to see it.
Thank you. I'll say for myself, I would like to see that. And then just other comment that I appreciate the work going into this and that the city is supporting this effort, because I think it's very important need. So I appreciate that.
Okay, any other questions? Chandra?
I was just gonna make the motion.
Oh, please go ahead.
I move to approve resolution number 2, or move on to city council resolution number 2021-12-049R, a resolution approving a funding agreement with CU at Home Winter Shelter. Is that eligible for the consent agenda?
Yes.
On to the consent agenda.
And you did say for approval, right?
Yes.
All right, thank you for that.
I'll second.
I'll second.
Jaya has seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes on to the city council next week. We are now to ordinance number 2021-12-049, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class P liquor licenses for Zayed Salem LLC, doing business as Black Fox at 602 North Cunningham Avenue, Urbana, Illinois.
If you allow, I will talk about the next 3 ordinances. They're all related to liquor licenses.
Okay.
So first, as you mentioned, is a Class P liquor license. Actually, the number of overall Class P licenses in the city will not increase with passage of this one because we had the Circle K at the corner of Lincoln and Green close. So a Class P is for packaged liquor sales, and this is going to be at 602 North Cunningham Avenue in Urbana. It represents a new business owner. The next liquor license is one for the new Japanese restaurant in downtown Urbana, located at 132 West Main. That's Sakura. This is a Class R and T. That will increase the overall number of R&T restaurant and tavern licenses by one, and this will be for the sale of alcoholic liquor. So it'll be beer, wine, and mixed drinks. And then the third liquor license is another new business locating at the Stone Creek Atkins golf course. And this will be for the new restaurant called Homegrown, which is being operated by the owners of the Wheelhouse in St. Joe. And this is for our Class GC liquor license. This is one of the new classes of liquor licenses that were created when we rewrote the liquor code. GC stands for golf course. And so this allows for the sale of alcohol both at this clubhouse and on the rest of the property. So they may have special stands set up on the golf course or for other events. So this is one of the liquor license categories that was brought to our attention as being one that would be useful to have and offer flexibility to owners of the golf course. So I would recommend approval of each of these three licenses, and this will increase the number of GC licenses in the city of Urbana from 0 to 1, since we only have one golf course in the city limits.
Okay, Mary Alice.
I just have a quick question about the Black Fox. Do you know what kind of business that is? They're selling packaged liquor?
It's a liquor store.
It's just a liquor store, a new liquor store on Lincoln?
On North Cunningham, it's
in Cunningham.
Is it adjacent to the Tin Roof Bar?
Yes, yeah, it was a bookstore.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, other questions? So I know it's a little tedious, but I think we will take these, since they're different, we'll take these one motion at a time.
I'll get us started on the motions, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I move on the consent agenda to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Ordinance number 2021-12049, ordinance amending the Urbana City Code Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class P liquor licenses for Zaid Salem LLC, otherwise known as Black Fox, at 602 North Cunningham Avenue.
And actually, that would just be issuing a Class P liquor license. It's not increasing the overall number of
it's
licenses.
issuing. Yep.
A second.
All right, Sharice seconds. Any further discussion on this item? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes. Can I get a motion for the next one? It would be appropriate for the person with cherry blossoms in their background to do that one too.
Sure, I can do that one. I'll move on the consent agenda, recommendation for approval to City Council, ordinance number 2021-12050, ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class R&T liquor licenses for Sakura Japanese Cuisine at 132 West Main Street in Urbana.
A second.
All right, thank you, Sharice, for the second. Any further discussion? For anyone who doesn't know, Sakura is Japanese for cherry blossoms. So, no other discussion. With the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wu.
Yes.
Right, that passes on to City Council. Can I have a volunteer for the last one for the golf course?
I can do this one. Make a recommendation for approval on the consent agenda for ordinance number 2021-12-051, and ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class GC liquor license for Locador for whatever.com LLC, doing business as Homegrown, 2600 Stone Creek Boulevard, Urbana, Illinois.
A second.
All right, thank you for the second, Sharice. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. The motion passes. Next up, we will be addressing resolution number 2021-12-050R, a resolution authorizing acceptance of an Illinois Arts Council Agency IACA grant for arts and culture program operating support.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rachel. Welcome back.
Hi there. Hi there again. Yes, I'm here to present about this new funding that we received. The Urbana Arts and Culture Program was recently awarded a grant by the Illinois Arts Council for general operating funds for the fiscal year 2022. This funding is awarded to exceptional arts organizations and those with significant arts programming. As many of you are probably aware, the arts program is responsible for things like our Urbana Arts grants, which we currently have applications open for, our Young Artist Studio free art lessons for kids, our Art Now mini documentary series, sculpture programs, mural programs, most recently our utility box mural programs, and the list goes on. We have quite a lot going on. IACA is a state agency. It provides operating and technical support to organizations and programs statewide. It also keeps Illinois' arts sector vital, vibrant, and accessible. Their program grants fund supporting nonprofit organizations and those like us creating a meaningful impact in their communities through high quality arts programming. We were awarded $5,700 this cycle in unrestricted program support. A copy of the grant agreement is attached explaining the terms of, and the resolution itself. As indicated, funds received from this grant will be used to support general operations of the Arts and Culture Program in FY 2022. Matching funds required for this grant are entirely covered by our existing program budget. While the grant fund has already been awarded to the city, we do know that it's necessary to adopt a resolution signifying the city's formal acceptance of the grant and outlining the terms. So we don't see any significant fiscal impact in general fund expenditures related to the grant. The grant money itself will support the hiring, we hope, of a part-time staff person to assist the arts and culture coordinator. Your options this evening are to approve the attached resolution, to approve with any changes, or to not approve the resolution. And of course, we, the staff, recommend the City Council approve the resolution with placement on the City Council consent agenda, authorizing acceptance of the IACA grant to the Urbana Arts and Culture Program.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions? If there's no questions, will someone make a motion? Sharice?
I'd like to move for approval for City Council on a consent agenda. A resolution number 2021-12-050R, resolution authorizing acceptance of an Illinois Arts Council Agency IACA grant for arts and culture program operating support.
Thank you.
Second.
Jaya, with a second. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes, and we can move on to, thank you, Rachel,
Thank
to
you.
ordinance number 2021-12-052, an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022. Elizabeth, is this yours?
This is mine. And if it's all right, I'll just cover all three of these together. They kind of make up the package of ordinance that is our property tax levy. So you might recall we talked about this several weeks ago, and we were not planning to come back to committee. We were just going to place this on the agenda on the 13th for approval. However, there was a little wrinkle that I just want to make sure that you understand. So I'm not going to repeat the whole presentation about the tax levy, but I do want to speak a little bit about the abatement of the corporate levy and Public Act 1020519. So this act requires the county clerk to automatically increase the tax levy extension to account for certificates of error, court-ordered changes in valuations, and PTAB or property tax appeals board decisions that have occurred within the past year. So the effect of this, so I want to say initially we didn't think this would apply to the city. It appeared that it only applied to PTAL taxing districts, and the city is not subject to PTAL, which is the property tax extension limitation law. However, on November 23rd, we learned that the Department of Revenue had issued an opinion saying that this applied to all taxing districts. And so it does in fact apply to us. So the concern is that we've worked very hard to maintain a stable tax rate, which I hope our taxpayers appreciate. And we had intended to maintain a stable rate of 1.3499. However, because of this change in the law, what would happen is that additional extension would be made on top of our regular extension. And so after talking with some other finance directors in the area and also kind of considering our best option, we actually are proposing this year an abatement to the corporate levy in a format that is just slightly different than what we have done in the past. And what this will allow us to do is once the levy is extended, we can do the math and quickly return that to the county clerk, and we can make sure that even with the additional extension, and the amount of that should be known at that point. We don't know that with certainty right now. We can still maintain that stable $1.3499 tax rate. And so the ordinances that you have together would result in that tax rate that is the target that we intended. If we choose to do it, not to do it this way, then the tax rate would actually end up being higher, probably $1 in the range of $1.36.20, because that extension would be applied on top of the $1.3499. So we are recommending that we do it as presented here, which will maintain our current tax rate.
Right. Do we have any questions? I don't see any questions. There we go. Grace?
Thanks. Sorry, trying to wrap my head around that enough to have a cohesive question. So you're saying that the clerk will automatically increase the levy, but like by how much? By like that 5% or what?
Well, we're still waiting for the clerk to tell us that, but what I did was Cunningham Township does have a definite number. And so I was able to extrapolate from that because we're coterminous, we're talking about the same group of properties. So adjusting for the tax rate, I expect that number to be about $75,000. So that would be applied on top of our $1.3499 tax rate, unless we do this alternate method of abatement where we do the calculation at the last minute.
And so you're saying that that $75,000 increase would change the taxes for all of Urbana by that 0.02 something almost?
Correct. Yeah, for every taxpayer in the city. Now I'm gonna, to be clear, this is also happening for all of the other taxing districts at the same time. So I can't predict the impact overall on the total tax rate, but what we can do is try to control our little 13% piece of the total tax rate.
Yeah, which I definitely do appreciate and understand. And I think that a lot of the public would as well. And also just balancing that with being able that we can, you know, not sell the city portion short, since we are also just a fraction of that. If the other taxing bodies aren't of the same mindset, it seems like it kind of needs to be a little bit of a joint effort. Like if the other ones are increasing while we're decreasing, you know, I think we could be hurting the city operations and not actually helping the taxpayers. So I don't know if any of that's the case, but just things that I'm balancing in my mind. I imagine you all are as well.
Yeah, it's really, we don't know at this point what everyone else is going to choose to do. They could file abatements after the fact that you know, we don't even know at this point. Many of the districts haven't approved their final tax levies yet.
Okay, and so one more thing, I'm still trying to understand how the $75,000 would increase the tax base that much for such a small amount of money.
So it's just math. Basically, you're taking the amount that would be levied, and it's levied per $100 of equalized assessed valuation. So when you do the calculation, that amounts to like 2 cents on every, you know, $100 of assessed valuation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mary Alice, can you take the chair for a moment?
Sure, Chair recognizes James.
So do we know if the ruling, it's the Illinois Department of Revenue that made that ruling?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if anybody's going to challenge that in the name of home rule municipalities?
So we don't know if anybody will challenge that. We also don't know, I kind of suspect, because if you read the act, it's very vague. It's very brief and doesn't provide a lot of detail about how this is supposed to work. So I think it's possible there could be a legislative solution to clarify as well. But because of the way we're doing this, we are able to fill in the blank at the very last minute before they extend the tax levy. Whatever happens between now and then, we can take that into account to achieve the tax rate we want.
Yeah, I appreciate the solution. It just seems to me that, and I'm also used to legislation that doesn't seem to have taken all of the implications into account, but just feels like it's a mistake. But in any case, thank you. Thank you, Mary Alice.
All right, I relinquish the chair.
All right, the chair recognizes Sharice.
Okay, Elizabeth, yeah, and I'm always saying I'm not a mathematician. So the 75,000 roughly, that would that's not per household or per property. That's spread throughout the Cunningham Township, or what?
That's over our entire tax base, right?
Okay. All right. All right. I guess I get it.
All right.
Okay.
So if there are no further questions, we can start working through these three motions. And these cannot be on consent agenda, correct?
I think not, because they require the mayor's vote.
Okay.
I actually wanted to send it to city council with no recommendation because I'm still wrapping my head around this too.
Okay.
But So I'll move ordinance number 2021-12052, an ordinance levying taxes for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022 to City Council with no recommendation.
All right, thank you, Mary Alice.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Sharice, for the second. Further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm hoping we'll get more information about that, how that's going to work before we have to dead set it. I'm sorry, James, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, what more information on how it's going to work? What are you looking for?
I mean, what the state is going to do or what the state can do and how we wrap our heads around,
Yeah.
understanding that. That's what
It's pretty straightforward, right, Elizabeth?
Well, so what I'm gonna say is you're up against the deadline to levy taxes, right? There's a statutory deadline. I
Right.
don't think it's gonna get clarified before that statutory deadline. I do think the way we've presented the ordinance for the corporate levy abatement, it leaves us flexibility to make sure we get that target tax rate regardless of what happens after the fact.
Okay.
The state isn't going to change what they're doing. It's done. It's
Yeah.
just what the numbers that come from the county look like that causes the variability. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Correct. I mean, the numbers we don't know for sure. I've kind of had to extrapolate that. And whether, as you said, there could be some kind of challenge to that ruling from the Department of Revenue or conceivably some new legislation to attempt to clarify this. No, you're not going to have those answers. The only answer you might have would be the figure from the county clerk for the additional extension amount. The other answers you're not going to have before you have to pass a tax levy.
Yeah, well, I think basically that's what I was thinking in terms of it's at least have more information on some level so that we know what we'll be dealing with and abating and so on and so forth. You understand what I'm not saying it right because I'm not a math person. So I'm just stating my stupidity right now with all of this.
I will, anything that you tell me you need, I will do my best to get it for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Grace. Oh, sorry, Diane.
I would just ask if people have specific questions, please send them to Elizabeth ahead of time. She can answer them and she'll share the answer with all the council members. But yeah, she needs to know what information you're actually looking for.
Okay.
All right, Grace.
Thanks, which was kind of confused if we're on an item now or what, but one piece of information I know now I would like that would find helpful and seems much more straightforward is if you could just help us understand more the 75,000 increase abatement and how that increases the overall rate that much. I understand is, I imagine the simple equation, but I'm not getting it. So if you could even just spell it out for us by the next meeting, I would find that one helpful.
Sure, I'll just do that in an email and I can lay it all out so you can see the whole thing.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm waiting for a motion on the second item, number 15.
Oh, I'd like to move for approval for the ordinance number 2021-12-053, an ordinance directing the Champaign County Clerk to abate the tax levy for the general corporate fund for the tax year beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending June 30th, 2022.
All right, do you want to move that with with approval, recommendation for approval, or just without recommendation?
Or maybe without recommendation for right now.
All right, thank you. And then Mary Alice?
Yeah.
You're okay with seconding it that way?
Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti.
Yes.
That passes on to City
Does-
Council.
Excuse me, does the mayor
Yes.
vote on that, Phyllis?
Oh, here I
Well-
go again.
Actually, I don't think that you need to send it to council but you will have to vote on it at council because that will be the final vote. But
Okay,
if you want,
great.
you want to vote
Okay.
on this now?
No, that's okay. Just want to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to.
Yeah.
All right, one more to go, motion-wise at least. Mary Alice?
I had a quick question, Elizabeth. This last one is not impacted, right, by the new ruling? Is that right? Or are all three of these impacted?
So actually, the only one of the three that is
Second.
really different because of the ruling is, and I'm trying to make sure the order I have these in matches to the order on the agenda.
I think
The
it's-
only one that's impacted is 2021-12053. It's the abatement to the corporate levy. So you're right, this last one on the agenda is for the bonds and it's not.
Right. Okay, so then I'm going to make a motion to send this to City Council with the recommendation for approval because it's not, there's no change here. For ordinance number 2021-12054, an ordinance directing the Champaign County Clerk to abate a portion of the 2021 related general obligation bonds series 2014. City Council with approval.
A second.
Second.
Seconded by Chris. Can you add a little bit more to this one, Elizabeth? Which bonds these are?
Sure. The 2014 bonds were for the Windsor Road improvements. They're actually, last year we had 2 abatements, but we already did our last levy for the 2012 bonds. And just because they were general obligation bonds, they're backed by the city's taxing authority. And when the bonds are issued, there's an order that immediately goes to the county clerk that says you must levy taxes for these. So what happens in practice, if we want to get the lower interest rate from a general obligation bond issue, but pay them from another source, is we have to go through this process on an annual basis.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes. That passes, and we have concluded our ordinance and resolutions. We are now at council input and communications. Please let me know if you want to speak. Mary Alice?
I just wanted to thank all of the city staff who participated in the council goals activities on Thursday and Friday. I know that took a lot of organization, a lot of time, and a lot of people came to both of those sessions. And one thing that struck me was when we went around and were doing kind of the initial exercise was just about everybody in the Zoom room here loves Urbana for very similar reasons. And we all have very similar goals. The question is, how do we get to those goals? And so I thought that really resonated with me during that session. I just kind of wanted to share that with my fellow council members.
All right, thank you, Mary Alice. I think I saw Grace next.
Thank you. First want to remind council members about the scope of work that we've been working on drafting for the community safety review. I think Chandra's been compiling that. So just if anyone had last thoughts, I think we'll send out an update and then hopefully have that finalized soon. So just a reminder, if anyone hasn't had a chance to send in anything yet, that's a thing we're trying to finish up as soon as possible. And then I also would second the interest in an update about the co-responder follow-up model. Definitely interested in that. So I hope that we can have an update on that soon. And also agree that the priorities, strategic goal setting, I thought was really helpful. I think that's very important to do. I think that it was a well-facilitated thing and we made some progress, although we didn't get into all of the important, actionable, measurable stuff, which I feel as some of the really important meat of it in the details. So I really hope that we will come together to finish that conversation soon, because I think that we made really great progress, but we didn't get to the actual really important end stuff. And I hope that we can get to that together. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about public safety and just say that I appreciate people's input. I agree that this is a very important and urgent topic, and I hope to be bringing some presentations and ideas to the council and committee soon. And that's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And then Sharice, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah. I just basically wanted to say that I also thought the strategic planning sessions were useful. Regarding input tonight, there was Sarah Nixon made a comment about doing her own little survey, her little drive-through survey of different communities regarding what they wanted. And I just found that ironic, considering the fact that there were more than 600 signatures on petitions, more than 400 on at least one petition that actually asked for ALPRs. And those seem to be ignored, and she didn't have a problem with that. So it's not a matter of people, if you think the government is intimidating people, that is not how the folks that signed those petitions felt. I think they felt ignored and neglected and basically brushed over. So it's all well and good for you to walk around or whatever and ask, various people their information, but you actually had several signatures from people who said their names and their emails and so on and so forth, asking for something more substantive. And so I find that to be, I thought that was insulting. At least it was to me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Sharice. Others, Jaya?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the thanks, especially for the staff who came and spent time with us for the, moving the goal setting conversation along, and to reiterate that we got really close to making that progress. There's still, I think, an important piece. I think a lot of us kind of left with some energy, and I hope that we can reconvene. And I think having it in person, making sure that people had the ability to be there to hear that conversation was really meaningful as well. I found it very helpful to be able to be there in person with staff and fellow council members as well. So really appreciate that and hope to see that conversation move forward. I think there's also been some larger questions. I know some of us have received some feedback about expectations for comments directed towards members of our community within this space. And I think that reviewing the expectations in terms of rules of order when specific community members are talking about each other or being talked about more broadly. Those of us who are elected, we chose to be here. I think it's in some ways a little bit different, but I think not in terms of limiting what people can say, but thinking about what is appropriate in terms of intervening if we are concerned about tactics that might discourage participation, because I think there have been questions that have been raised related to back and forth within these meetings. And so I'd like clarification on what the role of, any of us as a chair when we're in these meetings is in terms of keeping the conversation productive and avoiding personal attacks.
Thank you, Jaya. Any others? If there are no others, I would ask Mary Alice to take the chair.
Sure. Chair recognizes James Quisenberry.
Yeah, I also want to echo the positive feelings about the goal setting activity. I want to thank everyone here and all the staff for their engagement. I felt people were constructive and really digging into the questions, and heard a lot of interchange that I thought was good. I do want to mention that I kind of felt that some members of the public came to those meetings expecting something different. And while I'm sorry that that happened for them, I think we did exactly what we planned to do. It was not intended to be a public forum for goal setting. It was supposed to be focused on this council coming together and having a sharing of ideas, which of course has to be done in that size of group in the public space. But I do want to assure the public that all of the people that are sitting in these chairs from various wards will take your input at any time. At least I hope they will. And if we always have a open mic at the beginning of these meetings for the public to share their input, and there will be significant public engagement around the ARPA funds and how we focus those on addressing our most important needs in the coming years. In fact, very soon in the new 2022, I understand that will start to roll out. So for anyone who came to that session and expected something different, I'm sorry it wasn't what you expected, but know that it was what we intended, which was this group for the first time after being in the seats for almost 6 months, having a chance to relate to each other and kind of see where each other finds their priorities and how much they align, which is another good positive item. I do want to echo Jaya's comments about the role of the chair. I noticed tonight that as chair, I do not have any control over mute. And there have been circumstances where I have felt speakers have made accusations, have started to go off the rails with regard to what I consider to be in line with what our rules say it's supposed to be. I've seen that happen many times now, but it has not been actually. I've even heard individuals using profanity. I would have expected someone who does that has their mic cut off at the moment it happens. It's not excusable to do that, but we have not been doing it, and we should understand what we should do consistently and start practicing it. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Mary Alice.
Chair is relinquished. You're welcome.
All right. If no other council member has something they want to share, Mayor Marlin?
Just a quick follow-up. Yes, we will be reaching out to try to find a date that works for everybody to finish working on the goals. And as you pointed out, we do have the action steps to finish, which is actually going to be the hardest, but also the most important part of the whole thing. So we'll be reaching out, and we want to get those finished hopefully before the holidays. So we'll be looking for a day.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank
Any
you.
others? With no other council input, we've completed our agenda and we are adjourned. Thank you all.